My name is Peter Heed. I'm an attorney with a local law firm here, Bragdon and Caseta, and I'm here to talk a little about the concept of civics. It's the concept of our responsibilities and our rights as citizens and our understanding of how government works. You know, we all have one of our favorite holidays being the 4th of July. We all go out, have burgers and picnics, and we celebrate the birth of our nation, and most people know that that's the celebration of the Declaration of Independence. But do you realize that a recent study by the University of Pennsylvania has found out that barely half of our citizens understand the significance of the Declaration of Independence, or what the difference is between the Declaration and our Constitution? This same study has also found that only a little more than half of our citizens would be able to pass the citizens test that legal immigrants must take that want to be naturalized U.S. citizens. And that's something of concern to all of us. I'm here to talk a little about that concern and to try to focus the concept for everybody, the importance of understanding a little more about civics and the way our government works. This concept of civics and focusing on the importance of an understanding of civics is really a concern of everybody in the New Hampshire Bar Association. They've sponsored a wonderful program called Civics in Action, in which we try to reach out to local groups and public awareness folks to talk about the importance of educating our citizens on their rights and their responsibilities as citizens. In Keene, as you may be aware, we're very, very fortunate in our school system to have a number of programs that talk about our history and our history of government and where we come from and the importance of how our government works. One of those great programs is called Keene Comes Alive, which is brought to all the third graders in our Keene school system. It's sponsored in part by our wonderful Keene Lions Club. And in that, the teachers work to help all the students learn about the history of Keene and where we come from. And then they have a program where various people take on the roles of some of the most historical figures in government and how Keene came to be in the 1700s. I'm fortunate enough to play Nathan Blake, one of our original settlers in the 1730s and 1740s, who came and helped found Keene, get it started, and was actually captured by Native Americans, went to Quebec and eventually England and back to Keene and helped get our town off to a great start. So it's a fascinating program. What we have learned from some of the surveys around the country is that our citizens are surprisingly ignorant sometimes about the very essentials of civics. What is our government? What makes it work? What are our founding documents? So, for instance, do you know that in this same University of Pennsylvania survey, less than 1/4 of the people surveyed could name the 3 critical branches of government, and only a little more than half could even name one? Of course, we're talking about the executive branch, right? The legislative branch and the judicial branch. Those 3 critical branches of government, which we all should learn about. This tells us that, at least in many parts of the country, sometimes we have lost focus in terms of educating everybody about the importance of civics. So I'm here to talk to you a little about that and how citizens who come to this country, as we all want people to do legally and become hardworking citizens that contribute in many ways to our society, when they come and you want to be a naturalized citizen, you have to take a test. Of course, you study for this test. It could be, it's usually 10 questions, and you have to get at least 6 of these questions right. And you'd be surprised at the numbers of people that cannot answer those questions. You know, even on the internet, you can find examples of interviews of men and women on the street asking the normal citizen questions about our government, and you'd be absolutely surprised and shocked how little knowledge some people have.
What country did we fight in the Revolutionary War?
France.
What does the Emancipation Proclamation mean? What did it do?
The Emancipation Proclamation?
No, the Emancipation Proclamation. What did it do?
I don't know.
You've heard of it.
I have heard of it.
Freed the slaves.
It did. Yes, that's what it did.
Oh, that's, I've seen that guy before. I feel bad. I'm not sure who that is.
Is that Bill Clinton?
A politician of sorts.
Oh God, I don't remember his name.
Who won the Civil War?
Yeah. Oh my God. Hey, I'm drawing a blank. It's one of those things. I feel like I'm on the Jimmy Kimmel show.
America? I don't know.
That's the Confederates, right?
When was the Declaration of Independence adopted? Still awake?
Yes.
How many stars on the flag?
32?
There's a flag right up there. See that one?
Mm-hmm.
How many stars on that flag?
It's moving too fast to count them.
Let's take a look at some of the questions that naturalized citizens might have to deal with and see how well you would do with some of these questions. You know, one of the first questions that is almost invariably asked in the test that is given to people that want to become naturalized citizens is this simple question: what is the supreme law of the land? And again, you should know that the answer is obviously at this point our Constitution. Our Constitution. And when was that passed or ratified? Again, many people confuse this with the Declaration of Independence, which is totally different. That happened in 1776 when we declared our independence from Great Britain. But our founding documents that created our government did not happen until after the Revolution, or toward the latter part of the Revolution, 1787, and it wasn't ratified until 1789. And I'm talking about our Constitution. That is the document that created the framework of government. There are three branches which created the checks and balances. And our government also set up in that Constitution with the most vital rights that all citizens enjoy. And that had to be actually added specifically very shortly after the Constitution was originally drafted. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Of course. The first 10 amendments to our Constitution. And what were they known as? You're right, the Bill of Rights. Think about the Bill of Rights and why they are so important. For instance, you should know that the very first amendment to our Constitution is probably the most important for individual freedoms. Can you name just one of the key freedoms set forth that we all enjoy from that very first amendment? Well, I'm sure you could pick several of them. How about your freedom of speech, right? Your freedom to assemble, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. These are some of the key freedoms that are set forth in the First Amendment. And further rights, including rights created in our justice system, come forward in the next 10 amendments that are part of our Bill of Rights. You may know that the starting introduction to our Constitution starts with our very concept of how government should work. The government should be here to serve the people. And what does our Constitution begin with? That's right, that phrase, we the people, correct? And what are we the people, what are we doing? What are the most important aspects and focuses of the Constitution? There's 6 important ideas that are immediately set forth by the Constitution in its very first several sentences. So we the people, what are we trying to do? Well, first of all, we're trying to form a perfect union. That's one of the key concepts. And also to seek and establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to preserve and provide for the common defense, to provide for our general welfare, and to secure generally the blessings of liberty. Those concepts are then brought forward and ensconced in our Constitution, which we all enjoy. Do you know that part of the problem with our government is that not enough citizens actually participate in one of the key responsibilities that we all have as citizens. And what is one of those key responsibilities? Well, one of those is to get out and vote. We just had a few months ago a major general election where we elected a new president, and that's going to happen every 4 years. And the media brings a great deal of focus to that. But do you realize there are many, many other elections, local elections, statewide elections, which have a great impact on our citizens, and we need to pay more attention to those. Another one of our greatest responsibilities as citizens is to serve in our justice system. Do you know that we have one of the only justice systems in the world where we allow regular citizens with no legal training to make critical decisions in our justice system? And what are we referring to? I know you realize this. This is the jury. And it's not just a regular jury that we all see on TV, those 12 citizens that sit and pass judgment on people in our criminal justice system, but also a concept known as the grand jury, which has to review all felony charges that are brought forward. No other country has a system like ours that depends so much not just on judges and lawyers, prosecutors and defense attorneys, but also engages the regular citizen as part of the justice system. I would encourage you that if you ever get a chance to serve on either a grand jury or what we call the petit jury, that you do so. It would be not only an educational experience, but it would be enjoyable and a learning experience as well. So if you get one of those notices, try to take advantage of it, not think of maybe ways not to serve. It really is a wonderful experience, and I would encourage you to do so. Let me now raise with you some of the questions that are encountered on the naturalization test. We've already talked about some of them. Let's see how you would do. For instance, one of the questions that is asked is how many justices serve on the United States Supreme Court, of course, our Supreme Court in the land. And the answer is 9. Do you know that our New Hampshire Supreme Court has 5 justices? And our federal courts of appeals have 3 justices. You're sort of seeing a trend here, right? An odd number on all of these benches. That's obviously designed so we don't have ties. And that's why it's important to fill all of these positions. Do you know who the current Chief Justice is of the United States Supreme Court? Well, that's John Roberts, Justice John Roberts. And one of the most important appointments a president can make is to the Supreme Court. We recently had a new member appointed and just recently approved. Do you know who that was? Well, that was Justice Neil Gorsuch. Now, you may be interested that even our small state of New Hampshire has had several, or at least 2, lawyers, eminent legal minds, get appointed and serve on the United States Supreme Court. Now, one of those justices was back in the early 1800s, and I wouldn't expect you to know Levi Woodbury, one of our great attorneys from the past. But you might know who was a justice that just served recently, that comes from Ware, New Hampshire, and was our Attorney General for a while and served on our bench in the Superior Court. Well, of course, I'm referring to David Souter. So our small state has had a major contribution to the U.S. Supreme Court. We talked about some of the responsibilities of a citizen, such as to vote and to serve on a jury. Well, what are some of the other rights of a citizen? Well, obviously you have the right to vote in an election, and you should do that. But another one of your rights is to run for office. And one of the obligations of all citizens is to reach out and take part in our government as much as possible. And if you can run for a local office, often that will have the most impact on local citizens. So think about your city councilors and your local representatives, the people that go to our legislature in New Hampshire. Pay attention when those people run. Try to become informed because they have an impact on your everyday lives. One of the other things we like to do on the 4th of July and other holidays is display the flag. The flag is displayed on government buildings as well, and it's very prominent. We see it all the time. But some people don't understand the very meaning or the symbolism on the flag. For instance, you know there's 13 stripes on the flag. What do those stripes represent? Well, I'm sure you're aware that that represents the original 13 states that made up our country when the Constitution was originally passed. And by the way, when the Constitution was ratified, New Hampshire played a very important part in that process. Did you know that we were the 9th state to ratify the Constitution and therefore brought the Constitution as the legal law of the land? That's right, New Hampshire played that important role. Also, there are stars on the flag, 50 stars. What do they represent? Yes, indeed, the 50 states in our country. Here's another key question that almost always appears on the naturalization exam. That is, what is the rule of law? We all talk about the rule of law, we see it in the media, but really, what does it mean? Well, it means that our country is a country of laws, not men. That nobody should be above the law. That governments have to obey the law. That everyone has to obey the law. And as we unfortunately see in other countries around the world, it is a rare thing to have a country that is subject to the rule of law, which we as citizens decide for ourselves. And that's one of the key concepts that we live by. Here's another key question that is often asked. We talk about the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, but do you know how many amendments there really are? In our entire history, there's only been 27 amendments to the Constitution. It's difficult to amend the Constitution, and it should be, because it's so important. It protects and defends our integral rights. So when amendments are passed, they should be of the greatest of significance. You know, there are lots and lots of questions that potentially are asked to the people that take the naturalization exam. These have been just a few of them. One of our great presidents, John F. Kennedy, once famously said that the course of history is a battle between catastrophe and education. And in a democracy such as ours, JFK said that it is important that education be always the winner. And that is true here. What we know about civics is that it is so important for all of us to be educated in civics. It used to be a key component in most school districts. It's one of those things that in some areas anyway has fallen by the wayside. We really need, as citizens, to look at our education and try to emphasize the importance of civics so we can all be better and more responsible citizens. Thank you very much.